a stream that emptied into the Connecticut,
Picked up the wrong one.
and it moved over 200 years, and the river was the boundary.
Hey, sort of sounds like the shipyard there for a second.
Yeah.
All right, see you now. I'll call the meeting to order, and first thing we'll do is appoint Larry to replace Brian tonight,
Thank you kindly.
okay? And then next we'll have public comment. So I have a resounding silence, so I'll close public comment. Next is to review, discuss, and possibly vote to recommend and present the Board of Selectmen with the Capital Improvements Program Committee 2020 warrant article and Capital Improvements Program Committee charge and composition.
So on your desk in front of you, you have a copy of the draft of that, in order creating a capital improvements program committee, and then the charge and composition, which also serves as the bylaws. Again, this is a draft, and I think it was sent to you several days ago by email as well. The other thing that you have is a draft of the warrant itself. And looking at that warrant, I do want to read you the authorization. And if you recall, when you first started to prepare a capital improvements program, I did ask you as a planning board, not necessarily you as individuals, but I asked the planning board 4 or 5 years ago whether they wanted to move on to a committee that was authorized by the Board of Selectmen, so that the workload wouldn't get to be too much for the planning board when, things picked up and there were development applications and zoning amendments to work on, and site plan review, et cetera, et cetera. At the time, you all said no, you wanted to do it, and we have done that. We've done it for about 5 years now. We're on the cusp of another year, even though the last one we just put to bed in December. And so the question really is whether or not you want to do this. And this is this. It's 674.5. In a municipality where the planning board has adopted a master plan, the local legislative body, that's the voters, may authorize the planning board to prepare and amend a recommended program of municipal capital improvement projects projected over a period of at least 6 years. The voters did do that. And then it goes on to say, as an alternative, the legislative body, that's the voters, may authorize the governing body, that's the Board of Selectmen, of a municipality to appoint a capital improvement program committee, which shall include at least one member of the planning board, and then you notice it says at least one member, and may include but not be limited to other members of the planning board, the budget committee, or the town board of selectmen to prepare and amend a recommended program of municipal capital improvement projects projected over a period of at least 6 years. It then goes on to talk about the CIP program and what it really means. This is your opportunity to make that decision tonight. I thought we'd run out of time because the last meeting was canceled, but you do have time. And really, if you look at this charge and composition, you will see, especially under 4 on page 1, composition and term, it says members, appointment and removal. It talks about the CIPC being composed of 5 permanent members and 2 alternates. You can change this if you wish and recommend it on to the Board of Selectmen to be a package with the warrant. Right now it says 1 from the Board of Selectmen, 1 from the Budget Committee, 1 from the Planning Board, 2 from at-large residents of the town, and then 2 alternate members from at-large residents of the town. If you want to, you can say that it's 2 members of the planning board, or you can recommend to the Board of Selectmen that one of the at-large members can be a planning board member. So you could leave it like it is, or you can do that. I also call your attention to the last paragraph on page 1, where it says that the town planner and the finance director shall serve as ex officio non-voting members who shall otherwise enjoy full privileges to participate in the proceedings, provided that they may not be elected to any office or position and not counted to make a quorum. The reason why they are slated to become ex officio is simply to get them to be at each one of those CIPC meetings. It's the way this was set up in Milton Borough. I was a non-voting ex officio member, and I actually did all the things that I do and have done for you when you do your CIP for that committee. So that is that. I would entertain any questions about this. It's only about 4 pages, maybe 5 pages. No, it's only 4. Talks about the annual program, talks about the terms of office, talks about conferring with departments and other agencies. I'm looking for, on page 4, talks about the fact that the committee shall file a copy of its report, and the Board of Selectmen's recommended capital budget shall be published and made available in a manner consistent with the distribution of the Budget Committee report. The committee shall file its original report with the town clerk, and the committee shall also file an executive summary of its annual activities for inclusion in its annual town report, which I think is a great thing. I'm missing, though, I wanted to show you that there, oh, here you go. On page 3, under 5C, action by the Board of Selectmen. On or before February 15th, following the receipt of the committee's recommended program. The committee shall be advised by the Board of Selectmen as to what they're submitting for capital funding requests as part of the coming fiscal year budget. That's a check and balance. It really didn't happen this year. We were done way too late for anything to happen, but in previous years, we have received a report from the Board of Selectmen that says we are doing this, we're not doing that, we are doing this, or we're changing that. So there are a number of warrants that are drafts right now, until Thursday, I take it, that have changed or altered what your recommendation report said. They have added some money, and they did that because they might have used the unexpended fund balance, or that the department had rejiggered his purchases or his finances and could pay for more stuff. That's specific to the fire department, I believe. I think that's an important step, that it be retained for the committee as it was for the planning board. So again, you should have a discussion so I don't have to talk anymore about whether you think you want to do this. I recommend that you do. So my recommendation is that you move to both recommend that the warrant be placed on the ballot, and that the order creating the CIPC and the charge of composition document become the order of the Board of Selectmen. That's what I'm trying to say.
Larry?
3 questions. Who is on page 1, who is the finance director?
I don't know. I'm sorry. Brian should be able to answer that question.
I don't know. I think Joanne, is Joanne the finance director?
I would think they should probably be changed to town administrator.
Yeah,
So
I-
they
Yeah,
might be-
I think that's a good idea.
That was where I was
Yeah.
going. And on page 3, under B, annually confer with the school board and every municipal department. By what date with what action required in
Okay.
return?
Page what?
Page 3, below B, the committee shall annually confer with the school board and every municipal department. By what date and with what goal? The proposal for projects? Because below you have by February 15th under C.
Well, no, February 15th is not a drop dead date for either the planning board or this proposed capital improvements program committee.
Oh,
It's a drop dead date for the Board of Selectmen to get back to either the planning board or in this case, the CIPC, to tell them what things they've followed in the annual recommended report.
so I'm sorry, how does that fit with annually conferring with the school board?
It's up to, well, how do we do it now?
Very poorly?
And it's not a
We do it well.
rhetorical question.
We do it well.
You do it
others
now
do poorly.
by starting out the process sometime at the end of March and early April. Your staff representative, that's me, sends out the usual letter to the usual suspects that says, we're doing it again. Here's all the forms, here's how to do it, here's all the instructions, and here is our schedule. So your first meeting, whether you're a planning board or whether you're a CIPC, would be to approve the draft schedule of actions for the CIP.
Mhm.
It's the CIP action schedule for the year. It lays out what you're supposed to do from meeting to meeting and month to month until you get to that annual report public hearing. That,
Thank you.
that could be added, Larry, but I'm saying the process is already there.
No problem. The way you're describing it, it fits. On the bottom, where it says,
Page 3?
again on page 3, the capital improvement program shall permit, and then it goes on talking about the town, that shall, such expenditure shall be incurred which has not been so approved by the town through the appropriation of sums. So that, you're content with shall permit rather than allow for, or?
Well, I think that what we're trying to do here is to make sure that there are no end runs around a CIPC. That someone doesn't wait until the annual report is wrapped up, sent to public hearing, and then someone says, well, I really need a capital project, and it's really important, and you've seen this a couple times.
Yes.
And it never comes back to the planning board to alter their report, to go through some of the process again, to make sure that that late comer is prioritized in its proper place.
So the approval by the town is the March vote?
Yes.
Yes, okay, that was not clear to me, thank
Oh,
you.
yeah. Well, I mean, the point is that there are several steps that need to be taken for capital projects in Milton after your report is submitted to the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee. And that is, they look at it, they decide how much of it they want to follow, all, some, or none. And then from that, they prepare the warrant articles for each of the departments, and that's been done. And then the voters get their say. But the important piece on each one of those warrants is, as recommended in the 2021 to 2026 capital improvements program. And if it's not on there, and it's a capital project, I think what we're saying here is that it shouldn't even go to the voters.
Mhm.
I have a question on the the alternate setup,
Mhm.
okay? Because really, this could make the body 10, the way that it's written, instead of 7. If each of the boards appoints an alternate, they can't be the regular alternate, they're a different alternate.
Well, Peter, the answer to that question is that the planning board member, let's assume there's one member on the CIPC,
Right.
there has to be an alternate named, not by the Board of Selectmen, not by the Capital Improvements Program Committee, but named by the planning board. The planning board gets to name its alternate member. And that alternate member from the planning board can't sit in for anybody else. He or she can only sit in for the missing regular planning board member of the CIPC.
When that member is missing,
Yes.
okay?
So if you did 2 planning board members, you'd have 2 alternates that are different.
I mean, you have to.
But you would not have 4 bites of the apple.
No,
Only 2.
only 2. Or in the case as it's written here, 1.
Nibbler.
I would like to think that,
We're gonna end up
I
with
would like to think
applesauce.
that your planning board representative on a potential CIPC really would focus much more on the planning aspect of the capital improvements program than the money aspect, and you can let some of the other ones duke out the money stuff. So that's one of the good things about the committee, is that the committee makeup sends experts in their field, as it were, to determine this annual program.
So, I guess this is a comment question, asking maybe for clarification, maybe I'm not completely understanding this correctly, but my understanding of this RSA is we're basically asking the voters to turn over to be appointed board by the Board of Selectmen. So, even though we have this recommendation of how the committee should be set up and run, it doesn't mean that technically they have to follow this to the T. They could tweak this document
Right.
after the fact.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted
Who
to
could, the
clarify
committee
that.
or the selectmen?
And
You're saying the selectmen could?
You're absolutely right, and I just want to answer your question first. You're absolutely right. This order, creating a capital improvements program committee, is a Board of Selectmen document. So that's why it's a draft, and that's why it's important that if you move down this road, that you strongly recommend that they use this. That's what I'm saying. That you recommend that the warrant move forward, and that you strongly recommend that this document be utilized with very little or no tweaks by the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, okay, I just wanted
But
to,
there's no way to lock that in.
I
You
wanted to
guys
make
can-
sure, I guess I was trying to clarify that, because
That's
I'm not
right.
sure if everybody was under that understanding.
So we forward it on, it passes, it goes to the selectmen, they go, that's a nice thought, and yeah, we're not doing it this way, we're gonna do it, here's how we're gonna do it. And it's a done deal.
Is
The
that what
power
that
was,
means?
the power was given, it was tweaked by 2
Yeah.
out of the 3, and they do whatever they
The only
want.
thing they can't tweak is what the RSA says, so
Right.
basically it has to have a planning board member
It does.
and
Selectmen and budget.
selectman isn't a requirement per the
It's not a
RSA.
requirement, but it's important, I think, in Milton, because you have a statutory budget
So
committee
then
here. You don't have an
technically you could
advisory
appoint
budget.
someone like Public Works Director.
Okay, I have a question. In the warrant article, we say there's 7
See how this
voting
get
members.
convoluted, your department head shows up and he's
Yeah,
on there.
that should be,
And-
that's
and-
gotta be changed.
Okay.
I don't know, I didn't write this, by the way. I didn't write this,
So-
but you should change in your motion if you do that.
Which one are we gonna do? I mean, we're gonna do the 7 or the 5?
No, it's gotta be
Which-
5,
Why?
because the statute says that it has to be 5.
Oh, okay.
And I'll read it to you again.
I didn't hear 5. but that's okay. If you say so.
7.
I will make sure I'm right.
Is it 5 or 7 in there?
No, that's not what it says.
The committee, known as the Capital Improvement Program Committee, will have 7 voting members.
That's me.
Yeah, but that's not, that's the draft. That's not what's in the book. Let me see if I can find.
Was it
I think this was in the books
1845?
already.
74.5.
All right, I could be wrong again. Okay, so that's what it says, is that the legislative body may authorize the governing body of a municipality to appoint a capital improvement program committee, which shall include at least one member of the planning board, and may include, but not be limited to, other members of the planning board, budget committee, or the town governing body, and it does not say how many people. So you could do 7. So that would, the charge would have to be changed. You could do 7. I think the more people you send to the party, the harder it is to get things done, but that's just a off-the-cuff remark, I guess.
So, I guess my other question with the way this is worded is, if it's kept in the current wording, does that mean then it is locking it in, saying you have to have 1 member from the planning board, 1 member from the budget committee, and 1 member from the board of selectmen?
Yeah, that's what it says.
So that would lock in that part.
That's right.
I guess my only comment about the board of selectmen member is it's supposed to be a recommendation to the board of selectmen. I understand there could be an advantage of having a board of selectmen member there in the event that they're bringing all the information to the committee and sharing all the information with them. In the event that doesn't happen, it may be a moot point. Just saying, but
Nothing the boys
Would
will
we-
do that.
Are you saying possibly having 2, maybe at the least?
I guess I'm saying possibly having none.
No selectman representation?
Right, if you're having the town administrator there as an ex officio, they should be bringing all the information to the board, and it should be unbiased, and it's a recommendation to the board of selectmen.
That would be
So-
unbiased then, yes.
They could,
Just a
they
thought.
could convolute it a little bit.
And I will also say, the board of selectmen is only 3 members, and there's already other committees that they are required to be on. And it does get to be a lot. So, the more committees that we have in the town that require 1 board of selectmen member, you just end up spreading yourself pretty thin being on that board.
That's true.
Two comments. You can change this right now any way you want.
Okay.
You can go to no selectmen, you could go to 2 from the budget committee and 2 to the planning board, or you can add 2 more to the at-large residents of the town. I know you want me to change where it says finance director to town administrator.
Yep.
But when you said lock it in, again, this is an order that is your document. You, as the board of selectmen, can revise this if it doesn't seem to be working. And you can always do that.
Right, so what I'm saying though is that if this warrant article is worded so we are following RSA 674-5, and you don't, because in there it's not saying you have to have a plan, it's not saying you have to have a budget committee or a board of selectmen member on that board. Should that verbiage come out of the warrant article is all I'm saying. By putting that verbiage in the warrant article, are you locking in that you're absolutely gonna have those 2 additional members even though it's not part of that RSA? Because that's how the legislative body voted it in.
Well, if you leave that in there, it then has to
Like
be
confusing everybody.
at least, so you said at least 1 member of the planning board, the budget committee, and the select board. At least.
So
Take
did,
the word at least out, then you might be even in more trouble.
Well, what if you just eliminate that whole part of it? Because if you're saying in a committee of 7, appointed by the Board of Selectmen, leave it at that, 674-5 is telling you have to have one planning board member on it.
And let it be defined by the meeting decorum,
I mean, if
right?
want-
Like you guys do now.
Well, it's,
I would mirror the language in the statute. I would end the sentence at board, planning board. Because that's what it says. And shall include at least one member of the planning board. So you could put the period there. But you could get up to 7 on this document by adding 2 more at-large residents of the town. And then just see how it works out by having this makeup right here, 1 from the select board, 1 from the budget committee, 1 from the planning board, and then 4 at-large residents of the town gets you to 7. Just a thought.
I don't think we want 7 voting members, though.
I don't know what you want. Five
Five
has worked
voting.
well in other towns.
And 5 voting and 2 alternates.
Yeah, but that's not what the warrant article as it's written says.
Yeah, but that's what the verbiage behind the warrant article says.
But, question,
I thought it said 7 voting members. Does it say 7 members or 7
It says
voting?
7
members?
voting.
It says 7
It says
voting
on
members.
the
Yeah,
warrant
It's
article.
not 5 members and 2 alternates. Because
So we either
alternates
gotta
don't
change-
vote if they're not sitting.
we either gotta change the warrant article
Right.
or add 2 more people.
Yes.
2, 3, 4,
And there's the
5.
other issue.
But you can't define how many alternates you're gonna have unless you put it in there. You're
No,
gonna
no,
just
it's
have
in
to
the
follow
char-
the
It's in the
statute.
charge about alternates.
In the charge, which is a recommendation.
Yep.
But if you put them as
Well,
alternates,
it's
then
not a
they're not,
recommendation.
then they're
Somebody
not
has to do
voting
this
members.
to create the committee. The voters say, hey, Board of Selectmen, you now can create the committee. This is the order that creates the committee. You've got to do this. After the voters say yes, you got to create the committee.
okay, question, that a juror who is an alternate sits and listens, but until they're called on to replace another juror, they are not in discussion, nor do they vote. Having 2 members from the public and 2 alternates who come so that if Harry drops dead of a heart attack and after the meeting starts, they can take over for him, is different than having 4 people as equal discussion members in the group. And what is your definition of alternate? What are their powers at the meeting? The other point is that right now, we have an elected planning board, an elected budget committee, an elected board of selectmen. I believe that the board of selectmen have the authority to designate the town administrator as the selectman's representative to meetings. If I'm right on that, then the town administrator could be a representative from the Board of Selectmen as determined by it.
We've already
Well, and
said
that-
he was gonna be the ex
He
officio.
wouldn't be a voting member. There's no way he could be a voting member. It even says so here.
Yep.
I mean, I think we're getting hung up in the weeds a little too much personally, because I think we either make the decision that we want it to go to the CIP committee and not us, or not, because once it goes to the CIP committee, we don't really have any more say. We can make the recommendation, but at the end of the day, it's not up to us anymore.
Right, but
I would still think, I think we still should make the recommendation, I'm not saying that, but I think at the end of the day, what we really need to look at is either, yes, we want it to go.
well, the information stream is not completely severed, because you have at least one member of the planning board that's on this new committee who, in other towns, brings back status reports on what's happening and then brings the report back to the planning board, they can weigh in their minutes on how they feel, and they can talk to their member about what they think is their priorities at certain junctures in the process. But, we're not completely divorced, that's all I'm trying to say.
Mhm.
I agree with you, I think you should probably discuss whether or not you want to do this or not, whether you want the Board of Selectmen to put this warrant article to the voters. Whether it says 5 or 7, that could be part of your recommendation.
If we get it off our plate, and the selectmen don't have to do it, at the end, the CIP recommendations are advisory. There will be feed in from the department heads, and the selectmen will have to create their own budget, and the budget committee will do the same thing. So, a very little skin is lost off anybody at the end of the game. Ship it out.
I think we should change it from 7 to 5 and end it at
Mhm.
planning board.
So, is that a motion?
And the town
To amend?
administrator, finance director becoming the town administrator.
Let's see,
Well-
here, it doesn't say that. The warrant article is the binding
Is it on their desks in front?
thing at this point. Now, page 1 of the in definitions, we got 5 permanents and 2 alternates. So
So-
if we,
I'll make a motion to just deal with the warrant article first.
okay,
I'll
And I'll motion to recommend and present the Board of Selectmen with a capital improvements program committee 2020 warrant article. I don't want to say as written, but
just
Change.
With the
just
following
to-
changes.
with the following changes.
Okay.
Change it from 7 voting members to 5 and end it at planning board.
all right. We got a motion?
Second.
Oh, that was quick, and a second. So, any discussion?
Yeah, what does that do for getting Ernie's brain involved as the town administrator and getting rid of the finance director?
Getting rid of what?
That has to do with the charge, which is
That has to
talking
do with
about the
the charge,
warrant
okay.
article.
Yeah.
So
doing the
But
warrant
then are you
article.
spreading him too thin?
So this is just a.
Well, this is just for the warrant article, but to that, I know because that's his job. He's right in the middle of that anyway.
So he's
Through
gonna
the
carry,
whole process.
but he's gonna bring that information back to the BOS?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, let's,
Well,
Well,
But-
don't you have to get rid of this motion first?
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I
Motion
said.
out.
I'm
We'll-
sorry.
We will do the warrant motion, and then we can move on. So as amended, 5, and no reference to the budget committee or the board of selectmen.
Yep.
All in favor?
Uh,
Opposed? Okay. Now let's move to the charge. The change we made to 5 doesn't affect this. But we wanna go down and change finance director,
Town admin.
Yep.
right? The town administrator.
Yep.
And we
Need a
wanna
motion for
delete.
that?
What?
We need a motion for that?
Do it all once.
Yeah, well, let's fix it all and then we'll have
Do
an
the motion.
amendment,
Okay.
an amended motion, or as amended. Now, we wanna take Board of Selectmen rep off, correct?
I don't recommend it, but You can do it.
And do we want to leave the budget committee?
I think having somebody from the budget committee is probably a good idea.
Okay.
The budget committee, as I think I have seen it operate over the last year at least, tends to look at projects for how they can be reduced, and has not characteristically made an assessment of their long-term utility to the town.
Which is
So they have to.
In your
problem with the budget committee, looking at the trees and not looking at the forest. Okay, and every time someone stands up and says, yeah, we went through it line by line, and you go, well, you did it wrong. Because you will get nowhere if you go through your budget line by line. Okay.
Okay, I withdraw my comment.
Well,
I hear all these
I don't want to get off track.
And they're, you don't know how this is gonna work. And I guess what I'm suggesting that we move forward with the way it's written here, because guess what?
Things change.
All other towns that have a capital improvement program committee have a member of the budget committee and a member of the select board on the committee. And there are reasons for that. Part of it is that each one of those groups hears back from their member representative as the process moves on. You're gonna see if there's bumps, you know. Oh, we're thinking you're doing something, you're going the wrong direction, CIPC. That might come from the Board of Selectmen through its member rep. And I understand about all the committees, but this is the way it's done. And it's, I think you're getting into the weeds and maybe changing a construct that already works into something that may not work. So my recommendation is to try this. I mean, the warrant article doesn't make you have to do it, and so you can change the order next year.
Give it a year.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right.
it's gonna be the Board of Selectmen that changes the order, technically.
That's correct, not the
Yeah.
planning board.
Right.
I didn't make that clear, but really, that's,
We don't like that, we can always shake your
All right,
hand.
well, we appear to all agree on one change, and now do we have further objection on the other one?
I don't, like I said, I was just,
Okay.
either way, I was just
Alright,
voicing one concern with.
Yeah, because you're
with-
figuring it's probably gonna be you, huh?
You might be very surprised. You know,
Alright.
in March I am up.
Let's take I'll take a motion then on the charge.
I make a motion on accepting the charge as written, except for changing finance director to town administrator.
I'll second.
recommend.
Huh?
Recommend. You're recommending that this charge, as
Oh.
amended,
Okay.
go
Okay.
to the Board of Selectmen for them to act on if the warrant is voted on by the citizens.
How he said it.
I'll second
To
that.
recommend
Alright.
and to present.
All right.
All right, any further discussion?
30-second shaggy dog. Friend of mine worked with in prison, never took a day off. He did not want to leave the state ed department unguarded in the prison system. He always wanted to know what they were doing and went to every meeting. That's for keeping the Board of Selectmen in the loop.
Move the vote.
All right. So, any further discussion?
None.
Done.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
The meeting don't go as the last for you.
That is true. Happens every day.
So we'll move on to item 4.
I was getting used to this outline.
I know, right?
All these fancy colors. Yeah.
Questions?
We selected the stop vote.
Uh-huh.
I think you need a little bit more background to frame the discussion. I guess what I would say is that almost a year ago, the Board of Selectmen, for reasons that I probably could paraphrase, ordered me to work on an ordinance for the town that brought in certain aspects of the International Property Maintenance Code, and that's the 2018 International Property Maintenance Code. They, I think, made it clear at one point that they really didn't want the whole code authorized as an ordinance. And the code itself says that you can do that. You can cherry pick the sections, or I'm sorry, the chapters, and then you can even take sections out of the chapters that you want to enact. That's the word I was looking for, sorry. The unfinished question was, how was that ordinance, that draft ordinance, going to be brought to the people? Is it going to be brought to the people as a land use ordinance or as a general ordinance by the Board of Selectmen? And I'm pretty sure that I got my answer, that the Board of Selectmen wanted this to be advanced as a land use ordinance, and that means that the planning board has the authority. The planning board has the authority to prepare and develop the ordinance language and see what the public thinks in a public hearing or two format, and then advance that as a land use ordinance, not a zoning ordinance. I think this should be a standalone ordinance, and it can be. It does not have to be part of the zoning ordinance. But again, that's up to you as well. So. And, just so you all understand, my my research into different towns throughout New Hampshire is that out of possibly 10 towns, 7 towns do add it to their zoning ordinance. 3 towns use it as a standalone ordinance. So it's up to you. We can do it either way.
And when you say that, are they just taking parts of it, or are they going with the whole thing?
All communities that I know of don't adopt the whole International Property Maintenance Code. Because again, you know, when you look at the handout that I've given you, there are 8 chapters to the IPMC. And of those 8 chapters, you absolutely have to adopt most or all of Chapter 1, which is the scope and administration of the ordinance, of the code. You absolutely have to adopt all or most of Chapter 2, which is definitions. And then in Milton, I really believe that the only chapter that Milton needs to adopt all or most of it, is chapter 3, which is general requirements. The other ones are really addressed by Milton's building code, which now is the 2015 International Residential and Commercial Building Code, and the Life Safety Code, and NFP 1, which is the fire code. So that all of these other chapters are not necessary. And when you focus in on general requirements, I think the thing to do is to read the general, what it means. General requirements is broad in scope. It includes a variety of requirements for the exterior property areas as well as the interior and exterior elements of the structure. The chapter provides requirements that are intended to maintain a minimum level of safety and sanitation for both the general public and the occupants of a structure, and to maintain a building's structural and weather resistance performance. Chapter 3 provides specific criteria for regulating the installation and maintenance of specific building components. Maintenance requirements for vacant structures and land, requirements regulating the safety, sanitation, and appearance of the interior and exterior of structures and all exterior property areas, accessory structures, vehicle storage regulations, and establishes who's responsible for complying with the chapter's provisions. The chapter also contains the requirements for swimming pools, spas, and hot tubs, and the requirements for protective barriers and gates in these barriers. Chapter 3 establishes the responsible parties for exterminating insects and rodents and maintaining sanitary conditions in all types of occupancies. So you don't have to do all that in chapter 3. You can specifically exclude certain sections. If Milton doesn't need to address fencing around pools and hot tubs, and it's already addressed in your zoning ordinance, you don't have to do it again. That's what I'm saying. And if you don't want to tell people that they have to paint their house, you can exclude that section. If you don't want to tell people that they have to replace rotting trim, you can exclude that section as well. It is up to you if you're the ones that are going to do this ordinance. If most of these codes do those exclusions, and that are around New Hampshire. I mean, Rochester has parts of it, Portsmouth has parts of it. Where Ernie came from, they actually prepared one, and it was voted down by the voters, I think because they were too inclusive. They didn't have exclusions in this, and they may have, I wish he was here to speak for himself because he worked on it. I know that they didn't include the whole thing, but I think there were parts of what they did include in chapter 3 that the voters didn't like. So we have to be careful that you balance the public benefit and public safety with personal property rights. And I know you all do that. So the question is, do you want to start working on this at your next meeting and have me prepare a rough draft that would give you all of the verbiage in chapter 3 that I think is it's the most important thing that Milton wants, and tell you what the exclusions would be from my way of thinking, and then you can tab the football and play the game. And I'm pretty sure that the chairman of the select board may have some comments too at this point about this.
Sounds like we'll probably have some lively public on this one.
You mean like tonight?
No, not tonight. When you put this one out there, they'll show.
So is this limited to any parts of town, or is this covering, are we gonna like implement this over the whole town of Milton Mills?
That'd be the whole town.
That's a terrible idea.
You can't just say, I'm just gonna do Milton Mills. You can't just say, I'm gonna do
Well, you
Milton
can do
proper.
that.
I think if we're gonna do this, it should be limited to just a downtown area and commercial rental properties. If we're gonna do it.
Second.
and maybe go from like the specific downtown, like the end of Dawson up there, to the railroad tracks or something like that. Just limit it to that area and commercial rental properties or commercial properties such as Cumberland Farms, Dunkin' Donuts, and then any rental properties that are in there, in that zone.
Well, it has to be it would have to be an overlay district that has specific boundaries. So you could have an overlay district wherever you choose. You could do it in Milton Village, but you have to say what the boundaries are. And it would have to be called an overlay district. And then you could do it for Milton Mills if you wanted to. But again, I think you're trying to do the work right now. And
Yeah.
really what I'd like to know is whether you want to start the work at the next meeting or not. That's really the only thing I want to know tonight. I think that you might want to hear from Ryan about the reason why the Board of Selectmen thought this was necessary. And your idea about an overlay district or more than one
Good idea.
is probably an excellent one.
Mhm.
But every time you work on any ordinance, it's really, really important that you hear from people who are stakeholders in the process before you make decisions. Now, you might want to say, well, we'll think about overlay districts, or we don't. We'll think about the whole town. We'll think about what parts of this we want to include. But the process that is envisioned anytime you change an ordinance is that you say, yes, we're going to work on this. And this is what we're going to work on, but we don't know what the specifics are. So to get to the specifics, where you get buy-in by the citizens, and especially those that are affected, the stakeholders, you should have open-ended discussion meetings. You should hear from the stakeholders, which means that you should have a couple of listening sessions. Listening sessions are when you don't talk a lot, I don't talk a lot, isn't that a godsend? And we listen to the people who you invite, and then you'll hear what they want. They may tell you, we don't want it at all. They may tell you, well, we think it's a good idea because I live next to a dump. I live next to Cumberland Farms. I could name a few other places, but you know what I'm saying. So you're going to hear from a lot of different folks with a lot of different ideas, concepts, thoughts. So you have to weigh whether you heard this much of positive and this much of negative, or whatever it is. But that's a big part of this process. That's one of the reasons why I think it's really important that we don't do the capital improvements program anymore, because to work on these things correctly, it takes a little bit of time, and you gotta hear from the public.
This
So-
smells of.
I think it'd be great if you could give us a base to start from, and then,
What do you call them things in the condo units and that?
Homeowners
Associations?
associations?
Huh?
mhm.
You can only have pink flowers and.
I live on a
So-
defendable ridge.
So
Well,
if I'll just share my understanding of where the majority of the Board of Selectmen is coming from when this was voted on. So I believe the majority of the selectmen were under the impression or belief that this document would be the only way that we could force certain people or certain areas of town to be cleaned up. I do not believe, and I think Bruce was at that meeting, it was almost a year ago, that the Board of Selectmen were, the majority of them were thinking that it was gonna be just a downtown district. Because the properties that were discussed were more than just the downtown area. One thing that was never discussed is if it is implemented, who and how are we gonna enforce it?
Yeah.
And do we have the, what do I want to say, the manpower right now to be able to enforce it? That's a whole nother can of
Cost.
worms.
Mhm.
Another thing that wasn't discussed, that not coming from the Board of Selectmen, but just coming from me, I guess, is every time, whether it be an ordinance or something that we already have enforced, that somebody does not want to follow, and we have to get a lawyer involved, it gets expensive quick. So, yeah, you might have the ordinance in place, and now you try to get somebody to clean up their yard, let's say, that doesn't want to. There is a cost to that. So I think we should keep that in mind too. But my understanding for the Board of Selectmen, and it was a 2-to-1 vote, I was the odd man out, surprise, surprise, was they wanted it so they could try to clean up around town. And it was more than just a downtown area, so. Did I
Yeah.
do a fair job of?
Yeah, and that's the reason why I wanted to hear from the board whether they want me to start working on this. Not that I want to start a war between the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board, but really if it's gonna be your process, if it's gonna be your zoning amendment, it really is up to you whether you wanna do this or not.
I like a fight.
I'm not,
That's you and
I'm
him,
not
Frank.
saying anything one way or the other, I just want an answer.
I think
gotta-
I'd like to hear from the public.
Well,
Oh, you're gonna.
No,
You're
no,
gonna. I'm
as
just
a,
saying.
as
That's
a,
not, I'm saying it's bad,
See, you
No.
can't-
but sometimes they misconstrue what we actually try to put out there.
I know
happened-
that. I know
That happened
that.
with the whole dump thing. We asked them for their opinion, and they thought we were trying to ramrod a dump in here, and really it wasn't the case. The case was we were putting it to them to see what their thoughts are, whether they wanted us to explore that or not. But it got twisted by multiples in committees within town to turn into that we were trying to push a site on them, and that wasn't the case. I think that was.
I would be really hard to convince that this is a good thing.
okay.
However, we don't know what it is yet.
Well, that's my point.
Okay.
Yeah,
So the only way we're gonna know what it turns out to be
Is to explore it.
is to take selected pieces, highly selected pieces, and
Yeah.
and go with that.
address them.
Yeah, because otherwise, this won't even be as good as the dump discussion. Okay? And I'm talking about the one downstairs.
Oh, that's the good one.
Yeah, okay,
yeah.
all right, yeah. The first dump, not the
Yes.
second one.
Ah,
Okay.
that was a good one.
Who and how and why, none of those, you can't answer any of those until you know what it is that we're talking about. So I'm.
So we
I
define
would
that first?
reluctantly say, I guess we need to at least explore,
The possibilities.
yeah.
So, I guess going off from that thought, would the board feel that we maybe be better off to first start out with some zoning ordinances that really need attention? Is that gonna have a better benefit to the town if those are addressed first, and this could be pushed off or pushed out?
Yeah, I mean, and now you are talking about the prioritization of your work plan here.
And I'm not trying to get off task, but I'm
You're
just
not off.
thinking,
You're not off.
I mean, there's a lot of talk about economic development, and I think unfortunately, there's a lot of talk about that, but people miss the fact that some ordinances really need to be adjusted to promote some economic development in the town. And unfortunately, last year, we didn't really get to work on any because we were,
Right.
because of several events, but there's not one on the warrant this year, so just a thought for the board.
And when you look at your work plan, you can see that initially the priorities really came out when you did this discussion last meeting or the meeting before. That the CIP was one. This one that we're talking about right now, developing the IPMC ordinance, was two. And then the one you're talking about that may be more important, what you're saying, research and rework the zoning amendment that failed 2 years ago, 2 years ago now in 2018, or was it 2019? I don't know. That was three. So,
And maybe I'll rephrase, I don't wanna know if important maybe was the right word to use, but would have a bigger benefit sooner on the town, impact on the town than maybe the importance part. So,
Yeah, and then you can include some of the verbiage from this and forget the whole thing.
I do see it as two tasks, but in the end, it would be two zoning amendments that would go to the voters. Right, you package them together at the end of the day, yes.
Just to satisfy the
So-
desire to tell somebody they can clean up their yard, whether they like it or not.
So the question is, so we don't know what is at risk. We don't know to whom this would apply. We don't know what costs would be involved. And three anecdotes. I believe it is Greenwich, Connecticut, which is white, and then there are the houses, which in the sacred ancient village square shall be painted.
Careful, Larry, my father was born in Greenwich, Connecticut.
I've always liked you, even so. Which the houses are white, and are enforced by rigid ordinance. For myself, in an unused room of the Cape, half the wallpaper had fallen down. It had been now ripped to an edge. About 1/3 of it is left to be done. No one will ever see it. More importantly, I haven't mowed grass on the wildflower, goldenrod, and I keep it for the monarchs and the milkweed. That is not ever going to be 3-inch high grass, and I keep my barn as ancient appearing as possible, because that's how it used to be done. And I've got entire books for how wood is treated. A 1-inch pine board will, if hung and exposed to the weather, at the end of 100 years, it will have lost 1/8 of an inch to atmospheric degradation. Bare. I think it's unnecessarily intrusive.
I've cut some old barn boards, and they're pretty good in the middle still. And they're a couple
They're worth
hundred
more when
years
they're old.
Do we want to look at zoning first, or do we want to look at this as a whole?
And I don't think you should work on it at the same time.
No.
Okay, well, that's what I'm asking.
Well,
I didn't mean to screw up the conversation either, I just,
No, what I mean, I think, my point of view has always been, ever since I've been on this board, is they pay property taxes. It's their right to do with their property, and I'm pretty consistent with that. Whether it's, if I own the ridge and I want to put 1,000 lights, even though Larry hates them, it's my ridge, and they should have bought it from me, because I want to light it up, I want to light it up. So you balance that fine line, but when it comes to property rights, it's your right to do what you will, let your grass grow, or have your barn any way you want. And if you don't like it, don't drive by my house.
What was that address again?
39 Campbell up on the ridge, defendable.
But I think we still have to look at the town
Showed
itself,
up
the
a ruby
downtown.
ridge.
Defensible.
Yes.
Yes.
I think we still have to look at the downtown area too, and see what we can do about that for improvements, because that's not happening if we leave it just the way it is.
well, and that brings me back to, goldenrod might not be one of the things in there.
So
Exactly,
it's
that's my
spending a whole
point.
bunch of
Yes.
time worrying about
Things
what
that
might be
really
in
don't
there.
apply.
until
Right,
we
and well,
know
that's
what
the only
is
way you're
in
gonna find it
there.
is go through it.
Is
In
what?
other words,
Just to go through it.
You could
Oh, that's,
exclude
yes,
you've
The
got
lawn
mow your-
mowing part.
You have to mow your, keep your grass mowed to,
Sure.
8 inches or whatever it is.
Yeah,
That doesn't have to be in there,
Right.
especially if you don't think it's important. If you don't think it fits Milton, that's one of your charges here, so. I do roll back around to this idea about whether you want me to start on this next meeting or whether you, and Ryan's comment, I think, is apropos, or whether you want me to start on researching and reworking zoning amendment 2 that failed the last time, making it so that it won't fail. I have been working with a member of the Conservation Commission on this. We did put our work on hold for a while, but that could be relit.
Bruce, what do you think would be the longest leg for us? The first part, the zoning amendment, or this? I have a feeling this would be the long leg. So we could start off with either start off with little bites or get into the long one first.
It really is up to you which one you want me to work on first.
but if we have some kind of plan of where we want these things to be initiated in, then the zoning would fit in those areas. I'm just throwing it out, you guys.
Zoning.
Zoning.
I'll make a motion, we do the zoning first.
Second.
What'd you say?
all right. So we have a motion to change the priority of the work plan. What was the fourth item, Bruce?
Oh,
That was another zoning thing, wasn't it?
yes, one of them is to develop new zoning districts. To take a look at the town as a whole, and rework the zoning districts so that they make sense and they're viable for the 21st century. Because they're not very good, they're really not.
Okay, so,
I'm looking at the zoning map right now.
so we'll take this IPMC and put it at 4 and move those two up. The two
Well, I
zoning
think we got a
things.
motion on the table
Well,
right
the,
now.
the most, well, I'm fine with the word structured right now. CIP, we already worked through. Research and rework a zoning amendment 2 that failed as a priority. And then, right, move the IPCMC ordinance down.
So the motion is to,
Just make the warrant article that failed number 1 priority. That's all that motion said. Didn't address anything else.
okay,
Okay,
Right.
that's all right, because it would be number 1, because we got rid of the first one. Second that. Yeah,
all
okay.
right. We can do it in 2 pieces then. All right, all in favor?
Right.
All right.
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Trying to help you out. Keep it quick.
Help you out.
All right. So now we have a motion to move the
So,
IPMC down 1 more.
before we make that motion, I think really what Bruce was asking us is, yes or no, do we want to look at this? I think that was really his initial question.
You want to
Yes, but last. And maybe it may be the selectmen's priorities, but we've had the priorities before that. It seems to me it's a knee-jerk reaction to whatever they're feeling, personally. We've been setting forth and working through things with Bruce's guidance, so I wouldn't think, just because they have a knee-jerk reaction, that we should jump it. If they want to take
I
it
don't
on.
think I'd call it a knee-jerk reaction. I think we should be working together to try to make these things come together nicely, not,
Oh, absolutely, but
You
we,
know.
to circumvent and to put their priorities into what we're already working towards and make it, channel it first of the month, to me is, all right, when we should be, already have other things on here.
okay.
Well, it is a productive assessment of time and effort and possible results. That what Bruce had a very cordial is not quite the word, but lucid, a conversation with Walter Cheney indirectly on the Cheney development on Elm Street.
Right.
For just in terms of what the population pressures are going to be on for the town of Milton, what the income is going to be for the town of Milton, and how people who are no longer able to buy their first house for $20,000, which is not even a good Volkswagen, how they're going to move into home ownership and deal with the terrible crunching costs of living in small towns. And Bruce brought up some excellent points about where the utilities are, what costs are involved, where population densities are, and where the outlying rural nature of Milton should be. And that seems more long-term important.
I don't want to get way off task, but I think that we as a board, when it gets to that, we need to focus on utilities and other such things, not one individual's project. Because if you focus on that individual project, you're not going to get anything through the voters.
I
think that
the-
name and that whole thing
the-
shouldn't even be part of the decision when it comes to
the
looking
nature
at
of
that.
residential development in Milton was the
I think we
phrase.
need to be very careful and cautious that we don't get sucked into one developer's rabbit hole and even go off their opinions. We need to just focus on the facts and the lay of the land and where the utilities are
Duly noted.
and keep that out, or we're never gonna get anywhere.
And that's why that stuff is in the SIP in the out years. So it can be brought forward when appropriate. So I
So,
think,
do we wanna make a motion that we do wanna look into the International Property Maintenance Code in the future?
Last.
I suggest you look at your work schedule the way it looks right now. I have to move some X's around for scheduling. Really, in the end, it boils down to, we're gonna work on developing the IPMC ordinance next. Or whether you're gonna work on it way at the end of the year. And whether there needs to be
Where is that?
an
The
open
very
discussion
end.
with the Board of Selectmen.
Very
about
last
this.
page. Uh-oh,
There's a page there?
you're missing it.
I
That's
don't
why
got
you
some.
can't find it.
That's why. Is that the same one we had last week? I probably had it.
You may have it from last week. There you go, Bart. Thanks. There you go.
Put that one back in.
yeah,
You got one?
Okay,
Makes
so
sense.
this is done, right? This first one.
If we took the three X's for May, June, and July for research and rework zoning amendment 2 that failed in 2018, slide those up to February, March, and April instead of May, June, and July. And number 4 and number 5 forward to fill in that spot and
Excuse
move
me.
develop IPMC to October, November, December. That would work. Thoughts?
I like it.
That's fine with me. If no one says anything, then
I guess I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to vote on this, because I'm supposed to be the
Well,
Board of Selectmen rep, and
I'm
they just
more
wanted the
inter-
planning board to work
yeah,
on it. They didn't.
I'm more interested on your priority on the last three on the list here? What's your priority? 2, 3, 4, or what?
So what, put the IPMC down to 5? Is that what you're saying, you
Mhm.
guys?
Yeah.
Yes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
And
goes
then
to
move
five.
up the zoning would be our number 1 then, right?
The research rework is number 1.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying, number 1.
Yep.
Yep,
And prepare community facility equipment then,
for the master plan would be number 2.
2. And then develop new zoning districts, that's 3.
Yeah.
And then we've got 4 and 5 already, or 5, 3, 4,
Right.
okay? And I just said that and I don't know what I just said, so are you gonna make us some new?
Well, right now, we're talking about 1, 4, 2, 3.
Yes,
And I will change the X's for the scheduling of when it does to reflect that,
okay.
if that's the way you want it.
Yeah,
Yeah, because we can go from there, right?
There's certainly some vertical impact on what can be done concurrently.
There sure is.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yep. County effort results.
So 1, 4, 2, 3.
C.
Yeah.
So now that we have modified the priorities, we still want a motion to at least look at this IPMC in turn.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we explore adopting portions of the IPMC. Well, however you say that.
I'll second it.
Okay?
All those in favor?
No?
Aye.
Any more discussion?
How? Explore how? By soliciting,
By soliciting comments from the
From the
population.
But you have to have something,
Right, we have to,
We have to review it first.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, we
Yeah.
have to
Have
get something
something
together
to show 'em.
first.
Right,
Yeah, we have to get something together first, then we'll do that.
yes, that's just a piece of
That's
it.
usually asking your planner to prepare a couple of alternatives for you to review. And then-
Oh,
Then also,
yes,
Lord.
I said, do that.
oh, no, don't talk to him that way.
Who's in that movie, Handle It, Handle It?
I say we
Thank
all right,
you.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
So now that we've
So we
changed
moved on.
everything,
now we have to adopt the schedule change, right?
what?
Or we have to, do we have to,
No,
that's all good?
We gotta see that.
Gotta see it before we adopt it.
I put my
Ah,
name on it
touche
so
on
I
this
get
one.
the same one back every time.
Right.
It's not gonna, it's not
See,
one
I
X for
put
an
it-
X every place.
Yeah.
So she did for me. Oh, she is such a good person, you know
Okay,
that.
minutes.
All right, minutes.
On fire.
Article number
minutes.
5.
Already looked at it.
I'll make a motion to approve as written.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, other business. Do you have any other business? No? All right, planner comments?
yeah, my only comment is just to make sure that there is communication now about what you just did to both the Board of Selectmen and to the town administrator. So that there's follow-through on changing the warrant language for the CIPC. I will make the change to the charge and order creating a CIPC, the things that you changed, and get that to the town administrator. But I don't know if it's premature to send that to the Board of Selectmen. But
Our meeting's Thursday, so
So maybe you should get,
I don't see anything wrong with you sending it to the Board of Selectmen.
okay.
Town administrator too, but
I think that's the extent of my comment.
All right, well, that was item number 7. Move on to item number
I'll
8.
make a motion to adjourn.
Second that.
Any discussion?
Well,
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
And down in either Scarsdale or Connecticut,